Live.
There we go. Hey, welcome back to the CRP. I am Miguel Iturrate, and I have a very special guest today. I'm joined by Justin Nett. Justin Nett, an indie pro wrestler, heavy on the Midwest scene. I believe he has his retirement match scheduled here for October, and we'll get to that. But he's here to help me out documenting the pro wrestling scene right now. A lot going on, and I want to lead off. Justin, how you doing, by the way?
I am doing as well as I can be right now.
Good. Yeah.
Man, this can be a good combo.
I'm very grateful for you to join us and to get some insight, especially from someone in the business and stuff, because I do think that the appearance of AEW has probably sent, a ripple effect throughout the indie scene too. So it'll be good to tap into some of that. But I want to lead off with the big company, WWE. They recently announced that they were taking their NXT brand and they sort of presented it like an upgrade, like they're putting it on cable, and now it'll be along with Raw and SmackDown like a third brand instead of like a feeder brand. So it kind of got an upgrade, and lo and behold, same time slot as the AEW show that's scheduled to start in October as well. So what's your take on that? Is there an all-out war because AEW is kind of been poking the giant and saying, no, we're all good, but they've been poking the giant. This is a tough response, I think. What do you think?
I think this is definitely WWE's response to AEW poking at the bear, because, look what WCW did. They poked the bear, and eventually they got shot with a tranquilizer, unfortunately. But there is going to be a minor disadvantage, I believe, because NXT is deciding to go 2 weeks before AEW starts on TV. So really, if NXT should have went the same night. They should have just all out, went guns blazing. Here we go. Let's see who really is the top dog on Wednesday night right off the bat. But starting 2 weeks early, it's hard to screw up a TV show and your audience in 2 weeks, but we've seen WWE do it before. And NXT going from 1 hour to 2 hours, I don't know if that's going to really help NXT because there's going to be more talking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's interesting, the whole switch, and it is an upgrade. It's going to be a little more demanding as long as NXT sort of, doesn't adopt the big show schedule, which kind of is a grind for the wrestlers and stuff. And still, here, this is what worries me, or from the AEW perspective, putting NXT against them is notable. Am I wrong, or do the NXT guys have a little more creative freedom?
They definitely have more creative freedom than I think the big Raw and SmackDown rosters do. How much, though, when they get on national TV, how much of that freedom is actually going to get taken away, though?
Because and that's going to be a big question. But how much more can they really handle with the other system, And if they're listening too, they know that system is kind of a problem with at least some of the guys, right? So to me, this is what I think could be coming is you might see guys from the indie scene go to NXT, but you might also see guys from Raw and SmackDown. If they decide to treat it truly as a third brand, you could almost see guys returning there. And if, they still are going to be shooting in Florida near the Performance Center and the schedule isn't as bad, maybe, like, for example, a guy like a Ryback could go back to NXT, and it's not so much a downgrade anymore from their perspective, but he still retains some creative freedom and stuff that he doesn't have on the big shows. Because, I think Ryback was one of the guys that you could tell was faking promos at the end.
Yeah, you could definitely tell he was trying to memorize written promos for him at the end there. That's
so,
for sure.
So in terms of NXT, do you watch NXT?
I try to catch it as often as I do. I just switched to Wednesday nights at my job, so now I DVR on a illegal stream site. Shh. But I do catch it when I can. I like the Street Profits. A couple of their characters are good. I'm a huge Adam Cole fan. I have his autograph on the wall right now. Undisputed Era all day. But yeah, I definitely like the NXT product. I actually prefer that over SmackDown. So
that's what I was going to ask you. Is this AEW, like a signal to AEW how serious WWE is, maybe putting their edgiest product up against AEW instead of moving one of the bigger shows.
As long as it doesn't turn too commercial like Raw and SmackDown has. And I think the big advantage that AEW will have over NXT is when you watch a WWE show, every arena looks the same. It's the same setup every single time. And from what I've heard, AEW is trying to do different setups to make every show feel unique and new, which, again, I think that's going to hurt NXT.
Okay. Now, very interesting stuff. So what is AEW? We're just about a week away. By the time you're listening to this, you're going to be in fight week, so to speak, for AEW All Out. And that's going to come up here in Chicago. I heard you got your tickets.
Yeah, my buddy just asked if I wanted to go because his brother couldn't. So I guess I'm going to go broke for another week and go to All Out because I missed out on going to All In. So this is my chance here.
Cool. Now, are you familiar with the card?
Very much so. Very much.
Cool. So let's go through what we have here. Obviously, at the top of the card and the big promo push behind it, and it's been a solid promo push, has been Adam Page and Chris Jericho for the first AEW World Title, and it's kind of an interesting setup. They just recently released Page's a wave of Page promos. I don't know if you caught them, but basically he says, AEW is kind of new, and his saying with the cowboy shit, they are kind of created on a little bit of that spirit, you know what I mean? So he's kind of created an atmosphere where, maybe creative is going to say, yeah, let's give it to Adam Page, and Jericho was brought aboard to sell it, Jericho's a pro's pro. He'll, for the money, for whatever, as long as they let him present it how he wants, he could put him over. He could also feel like, for his legacy, he wants to be the first AEW champion, and then he'll put him over. So this one, in my book, could go either way. You know what I mean? How are you looking at it? What more can you give me on that? Because, Adam Page, I know, comes from the New Japan scene, and I know that you're going to be better versed in that than I am. Does Adam Page have the chops to fight, a guy like Jericho who's, an elite pro?
I truly believe Hangman Page in 5 years is going to be one of the top 2 talked most wrestlers in the world, bar none. That guy is super gifted, and there's 2 matches on this card where I actually have question marks as to who I think is going to win, because it is such a toss-up. Because if you look at especially this match, you're either going to give it the belt to Hangman Page, who is part of the elite and being the elite and mildly, his friends are owners of the company, or you're going to give it to a former WWE guy. So, I mean, either way, there's going to be criticism, I think, whoever gets it, but maybe this is the match where my not spoiler, but prediction is CM Punk interferes and we still don't have a champion leading into the first episode of TV. That's my prediction anyway.
Okay, now you brought up CM Punk, so before we go through the rest of the All Out card, what are the chances here? Because what I heard, and I do have a couple little sources, but there's going to be a bidding war that comes up here. AEW has, picked their spots and signed up some guys and stuff like that. But the WWE's tried to crush that, and, we've heard, instances of guys receiving, upgrades to their contracts, double the money kind of thing. You hear rumors, but the WWE is actively tying up guys. Even in, there was even some information out there that they made an offer to a guy like Joey Ryan. Now, I enjoy Joey Ryan, but he's not quite a WWE, I don't know. He was on their radar a couple of years back, So, but all of a sudden they're just trying to tie people up, So, how do you see all that going with a guy like CM Punk, who said he'd never come back to WWE? But there's another one of those things where if in NXT they're going to have more creative, could he come back to NXT, still sort of save face that he never, return to SmackDown or Raw? And could they make it work with money, which they'll have to throw some money at him, And then all of a sudden they have a big superstar on NXT. Whereas if he really is, as straight edge as he has always shown himself to be, he shouldn't even be talking to WWE anymore at this point. That's been the show. So he was almost like a no-brainer for AEW, but that sort of was a stumble. Like like it's not clear cut. You really think he's going to be there, or you're hoping?
I'm praying to a baby Jesus that he's going to be there. He's actually one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. I get a lot of criticism for that, but my buddy here, he trains MMA at Rufus Sport. Shout out Nate Jennerman real quick. And he gets to train with Punk, and Punk's still training hard for UFC. I know he's not probably going to fight in the UFC anymore, but I think he's going to show up. I think he's one of those people who's going to say no, 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 but he's got to be there. He's got to be there. If you really want to change the world like he says, he'll be there.
Yeah, I from a buzz point, it just seems right, And the one other part of it that no one is talking about is that there's a 21-woman battle royal going on the card, and wouldn't AJ Lee be interesting in that?
Well, they have only announced from the names I have written down with 10 names. So, I mean, there's 11 entries yet still to go, and
that's a lot of talent. I mean, I don't think too many people mentioned AJ out there, but I mean, she's married to CM Punk, so you kind of saw her leave WWE around the same time. They didn't renew contracts or whatever and stuff. But AJ was a relatively compelling character, and her in-ring work came along at the end, I thought.
Yeah, AJ definitely was starting to bring it towards the end of her WWE run. But at the same time, if she would be in that women's battle royal, then everybody's just going to assume that Punk's going to show up too. So you literally wouldn't have both of them come back on the same show. At least I wouldn't do that. So maybe if AJ does show up in the women's battle royal, maybe then Punk's the first episode of AEW. Either way, if one of them shows up, the other one's got to follow. I mean, that would be the AEW power couple against Cody and Brandy. I mean, the possibilities are basically endless in AEW with those two as a team.
Yeah, it looks like they're going to emphasize the women's division more, so they could go off to the side, or they could do the intergender thing, which is kind of getting hot, in wrestling. Moving more towards the mainstream, where men and women tag team together and stuff. And then you've got Tessa Blanchard, who's not officially announced for this battle royal either, but is one of the people that many people are speculating is going to be there. They already signed, as you said, the AEW, step by step. You don't, come with the whole thing. So here's step 2 of the Blanchard signings, right? That would make sense. They have the father, and anybody who's watched women's wrestling in the last few years, Tessa Blanchard has put in the work.
Oh yeah, she's definitely putting in the work. She's working, I think, in a tag match against the Lucha Brothers coming up here in September somewhere. If it's in Chicago, I'm probably gonna have to go to that because that would be intense.
Yes, I mean she's taking it to another level. It's I mean, she's got the pedigree. I'm going to assume she grew up around wrestling kind of thing. But, she's also, a really gifted athlete. She's put the work in. And like I said, for her to compete with men, even, not the top shelf men, no need to put anyone down. Just, watch Tessa and be in the presence of greatness, because she's doing things that we haven't seen before. So, my hat's off to her. I hope she's one of the 11 competitors that we see there. Who else? Well, why don't you run through the list of the 10 competitors we already have announced, or what we have now?
All right. Well, so far there's Big Swole, who I never heard of. I did a little bit of research on her. I guess she works for Phoenix Female Wrestling Company.
Okay.
I don't get too much into it. ECW legend Jazz was announced on an episode of the Road to All Out. We got Eva Lise, we have Teal Piper, as you had mentioned earlier. We have Sadie Gibbs, of course, Brandy Rhodes. We got Nyla Rose. We got Britt Baker, Yuka, and Allie. But last I heard, Allie has been MIA for a couple of months dealing with some mental health issues, mostly like a depression sort of thing. So Smiley, I don't know. I'm really hoping Smiley Kylie's in this match as one of the extra 11 that haven't been announced, because that girl is way too gifted to not be in this battle royal.
Now, that's a good catching up on the scene. Allie, they sort of set up Allie, with a win, and then she was Brandy's opponent for that match and stuff. So you kind of thought that you were going to get a steady dose of her. It's a shame to see that she might not be in action here. Hopefully, she gets herself taken care of. But let's go through some of the other people who might be there. What about the big question? Awesome Kong. She's made appearances. They haven't announced her here officially, but could she come back? And to me, the thing that was right about there was a lot of things right about the Awesome Kong performance, right? But everybody sort of expected, at least from my end, sort of expected Nyla Rose to be the girl that's getting the big push. And, and she's so much physically different and bigger than the other girls that I think they made it a good statement by bringing in a bigger woman. Just the fact was, stature-wise, Awesome Kong, ruled the day. Now, she's older, and I don't think she can work at that pace anymore. But a battle royal would be a great place for her to pop up again, don't you think?
Oh, 100%. She's even said it herself that she isn't working at the same level as she used to, due to age and everything else that has happened in the last couple of years with her. But my personal opinion, I'm not a big fan of Nyla Rose. I'm not gonna crack any mean jokes or anything. I don't want to be Jim Cornette, so I don't want to get some bad publicity on the show. But I'm just not a fan of her work. I mean, she does a couple of cool spots here and there, but bringing in Awesome Kong will definitely help her, because then you'll see more of the strength side of her, whereas just dominating little girls really isn't too much of a big deal, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So Awesome Kong coming into the battle royal and eliminating her is definitely on my prediction sheet over here. So
okay, and that makes sense. And they're really, when you're dealing with Nyla Rose, you're dealing with a situation there that it is not going to be easy to find athletes, that are going to be, consistently, that are going to be able to do that. Bringing in Awesome Kong is one step for that. Nyla Rose, obviously, being a transgender athlete, she's also, representing the, I don't want to say Indian, Native American community stuff. So AEW has reserved a place for it now, but just strictly from in-ring work, I've heard she's kind of sloppy. Is that one of the criticisms you have on her? Chop her up in the ring, but she's got a long way to go. To me, it was a great surprise when the little Japanese girl rolled her up and caught the win quick in that. It was well executed and to me, a little bit of a surprise, because I thought it was time. Nyla Rose was basically 0-2 at this point, right? And wins matter in AEW, so she's going to have to win something at some point.
Omega is also winless, so I mean, well, at least single, for single competition. So I mean, we'll see how these wins and losses matter in the end here. We'll see what the end game is with all that.
Go through some of the other predictions you have for the women's battle royal. Do we have an idea of any other names that might be available, or that could get lured in there?
I'm gonna assume Jordan Grace, only because she's been in the trending again because of Jim Cornette, and obviously AEW is gonna want to capitalize on that. So I'm almost positive she'll probably show up. Other than that, to me, women's wrestling isn't very high on my list. I don't want to seem mean about it. It's just one of those things. Like the girls today bring it, like Ember Moon. I will never skip an Ember Moon match. That girl has my attention all the time. But just I don't know. I'm just not a women's wrestling
Okay.
guy too.
No problem. AEW is trying to change that, and I think this is a good presentation for them. It's a repeat of a theme they did on the men's side, which is kind of cool. And they're also talking about crowning the first women's champion on the heels of the men's champion too. So I think they're getting a good spot there, and we'll see how the roster goes up. Let's go ahead and crawl up here. Obviously on the undercard they're going to have Riho against Hikaru Shida. Now is that the? I think that's a continuation of the three-way match they had with Nyla Rose, where they had kind of heat at the end, and I think Jim Ross famously signed off the broadcast there with the sad face or something like that from the little Japanese girl. So that's a continuation there. So let's get into the main roster and the fun stuff here. Darby Allin, Joey Janela, Jimmy Havoc.
Somebody's gonna die.
There's gonna be some blood. Yeah, I think Jim Cornette's kind of, being a pompous ass, being disrespectful to guys that put in the level of work of these guys. If you look at Joey Janela's documentaries and stuff like that, and obviously everybody knows the famous, bump off the, warehouse, the crazy stuff he's done. I mean, it's hard to say that the guy's not. He's given his life over to this. And if that's not compelling, then, Jim Cornette's just being a snob. You know what I mean? But my my question and my worry about it is, sustainability. How, in my book, from what I've seen of Janela and more of Jimmy Havoc, I don't know Darby Allin's work that much, but Jimmy Havoc can wrestle. It looks like, he's had a trainer and he can wrestle. He doesn't need the staple gun. He can hang on the wrestling. And I think Janela can too at this point. He may be self-trained or I don't know that part of his background, but, on a weekly basis, they can't do the staple guns every week. That's my point. So how are these guys going to carry over to the weekly show? And then let's talk about what we're going to see here. Is it like it's obviously going to be an extreme match, so we'll take it from there.
Well, for one, I'm just going to throw out there that if Joey Janela doesn't win, I'm going to jump from where my seat is into the ring. So I'm just I love Darby Allin. That dude can bump better than Dolph Ziggler, and I think Ziggler is one of the best bumpers in the business.
I agree.
I've been watching a lot more of his stuff online. Like he just recently had a match with Moxley, and if you haven't seen it, you need to YouTube it because that match was insane. Jimmy Havoc.
Well, let's give a little plug to the. Can you tell me what indie show was that
on? I'm not sure. I think it was an indie show out in Pennsylvania. It happened about maybe like a month ago. But yeah, they tore it up, man. That match is put Darby in the body bag and slammed him, and I'm just it was a very, very awesome match. I used to do the deathmatch wrestling when I started, and I don't think they're gonna do the deathmatch style every week on TV. I think it'll be mild hardcore on TV and then do the crazy shit at the big shows. I think that's how they're gonna do that, just to make it a little more sustainable for their hardcore wrestlers. But I'm expecting at least one really big ladder bump from this match, and I'm gonna assume it's gonna be Darby Allin doing his little coffin drop off the top of the ladder, putting somebody through a table. That's my only prediction for the match.
And that'll probably be Janelle on the receiving.
Well, he'll probably move, and that's how Joey will win.
Okay, I'm interested in that fight too because they're physically they don't look like WWE guys. You know what I mean? Especially Darby Allin in terms of he's just a lot smaller. He might be a cruiserweight or whatever. And I like the fact that AEW is not differentiating in that. I do think we'll talk about their roster later here, but I do think they're missing big guys. But I do think that bringing in guys and not ruling guys out because they don't have a certain stock look is the way to go. I think that's a good way to reward guys that are talented, because I mean this is going to be a compelling match. I think we'll see some crazy stuff, like you said. The coffin drop, I think Darby Allin calls his move. That was one of those bumps that came up on the either it was Fyter Fest or wherever it was that was an eye opener. He's going to have a few losses on his record too if he comes out with a loss here. And then we got Jimmy Havoc, who might be the best wrestler out of all of them. In terms of just sheer chops from wrestling, from what I've seen. What's your opinion?
I just don't like the way that he just makes his bumps look a little sloppy, in my opinion. But I mean, sometimes the sloppiness kind of makes it look more gruesome in a way, because it's not how you're supposed to land, and people are like, "Oh, he took that real awkward," but to him, it's probably just second nature by now. But I do. My buddy on Instagram, Darby Allin, told us to find him at a skate park Friday. So Friday before All Out, I'm actually gonna go and hang out with Darby Allin at a skate park.
Okay.
So that'll be pretty interesting. I'm gonna try to pick his brain and get like a little 5-minute interview out of him real quick too.
Yeah, bust out the camera, dude. Bust out the camera. But yeah, so that fight, I think, if you're a mainstream WWE fan, you do see tables and ladders and stuff like that. And you mentioned mild heart. I think they'll go beyond that too, though. Here, I think you'll get to the tax. You might get. And there's going to be some blood. The staple gun thing will be there, for fans of that, it's a must watch. And if you haven't, I think these guys are the elite. Are pretty much. I've seen some of the other. A lot of other videos. I'm sure I haven't covered anywhere near it, but I think these guys, are the elite of that type of extreme wrestling at this point. You know what I mean? They do cover it pretty good. So, do you think when they get to TV though, like I remember in the '70s when I was a kid watching TV, on my father's floor, you would get. I mean, I watched the barbed wire match on television. I mean, it was granted it was 11:30 at night. On channel 47 in New York. So it was a Hispanic channel broadcasting from Florida. But, Gordon Soley called it Abdul the Butcher, Dusty Rhodes, barbed wire match. You had the famous Dusty Rhodes match with the cowbell in the middle. I mean, we saw Ron Bass also use that gimmick for his fighting. And that stuff was shown on television. Could AEW be looking to bring some of those old gimmicks back?
I think so. I think they're bringing back a lot of the old WCW, NWA gimmicks that worked back then, and just kind of rejuvenating it now to make it look a little more fresh, which to me is a brilliant idea. To be honest.
Yeah. I like the old. When they brought in Tully Blanchard, to me that was like. Immediately open up 30 years of storyline. You know what I mean? That's if you're not familiar with who Tully Blanchard is, now you've got something to dig into. You know what I mean? So it hits on all fronts. It gets the old guys, and the new guys are going to be like, who's that guy? And well, wait till you find out who that guy was. You know what I mean? It's like and one of the things that AEW did recently, I'm not sure what forum of theirs I saw it, but I thought it was really smart, was they actually talked about the Dusty Rhodes, Tully Blanchard rivalry from the old days, and they actually had a breakdown that they had met a certain number of times, and then Dusty had won 33 of the fight, and stuff like that. And I think that's brilliant. I think that is something that could set them apart a little bit. I think the WWE does a bad job with their history. They do, their retro shows and stuff like that, but they do a bad job with their history and actually with, the wrestling relationships, there's so many second generation, third generation guys on the roster that they don't use that with, and I think that's a nice twist. What do you think?
In my opinion, it seems like WWE tries to erase the past, whereas AEW is going to bring it back to the forefront. I mean, even bringing guys like Jake Roberts and Diamond Dallas Page and all the other, older wrestlers, Bret Hart even. I mean, that seeing Bret
Yeah,
Hart up at
behind the
AEW,
scenes.
that was insane.
Yep, and behind the scenes, if I'm not mistaken, I think they got Dean Malenko's over there as a in their performance center kind of thing. I don't know if he's a booker or I don't know exactly what role he's in, but Dean Malenko's a guy that uh, in his day was an elite precision wrestler. You know what I mean, like a Bret Hart kind of guy. So I think they're doing the right thing, and they're so far. I give them an A on the names they're bringing back too. They haven't swung and missed too much. I think they're a little bit out in the cold. If it doesn't work out, if it works out, obviously it's all fine. But they're a little bit out in the cold by bringing in Roddy Piper's daughter, only because, as far as I can tell, she's a rookie. She's never. This will be her debut. That she hasn't wrestled. If I'm wrong about that, please correct me. But that's a all-in move. That's a roll of the dice, and more power to him for trying it. But that could go wrong. You know what I mean?
Correct. Yeah, that is absolutely 100%. Her first match will be on the kickoff for a pay-per-view.
I mean, there's a lot of interesting names in the pay-per-view. I didn't want to go back to the women's match. We're trying to go up to card, and we're going to talk about Cody and Spears next with the Tully Blanchard stuff. So we'll head right into that. But it will be interesting to see how the women's battle royal shakes out. Could she win it in her debut? What greater pop for a future career could you get? So at any rate, let's go up and talk a little bit about the Cody bout with Shawn Spears here, and they built this fight up in an interesting manner. What do you think of the chair shot and the whole follow up to that?
I think the chair shot wasn't planned. I think it skipped off of Cody's head and then busted him open unintentionally. I mean, obviously the chair was supposed to be gimmicked, but it definitely wasn't supposed to do that. But what a better way to start a storyline than an unprotected headshot in 2019 in pro wrestling, considering we don't see those anymore, at least on TV.
Yep. And you know what I noticed? I'm wondering how much of that, like, could it all have been set up that way? Will make it look like a really bad chair shot that kind of sets it up. They showed the staples and stuff, and then all of a sudden Cody's head and hair was all pretty much together in promos shortly afterwards. So I don't know that they didn't do a real good job of selling the whole thing, but it caught my I think they've done a good job. Then the icing on the cake was, why did Shawn Spears do that? And if you remember the storyline, they had Shawn Spears in this promo with the yellow car looking over the city and how he wanted to take over and stuff. And then bringing Tully Blanchard in with the explanation of, something as simple as using a pro wrestling term like he's a good hand, will set a guy off. And that could be insulting to a pro and stuff like that. So I think they've done a good job. But let me ask you about Shawn Spears, because I think Cody Rhodes is an A-class wrestler. Is Shawn Spears on the level? Did he come from the Indies? What can you fill me in on Ty Dillinger / Shawn Spears?
I'm a big fan of Ty Dillinger, so when I heard he was going to AEW, I automatically became a big Shawn Spears fan. I think he can go. I think he was kind of held down when he was in the NXT. Now that the reins are kind of off and he can kind of showcase what he used to do on the indie scene, I think you're going to see a whole different side of the person that everybody thought as Ty Dillinger. And he's an amazing worker. He's very intense. It's just focus on his eyes. His eyes tell a story in the match. They are always stone cold and focused, and he's very good with his facial expressions in the ring. That's one thing I always look for as a psychology in wrestling.
And go ahead. No, sorry, go ahead.
Shawn Spears, just everything, his facials, his timing, the amount he draws back on his punches, everything to it. I mean, it's so crisp, dude. I love Sean Spears.
Okay, and that's to me that's great news because Spears and Adam Page are the guys that I think if you just kind of watch WWE and like are the main American wrestling scene, you may be wondering about. But especially in the early stages, it's not hard to pick the elite guys from that are out there. You know what I mean? So hopefully they don't miss on many of these. Is my feeling. So Spears against Cody Rhodes. Do you think they extend this feud, or is it a once and done? Or at some point, if they go by the old days, you may get a match, a disqualification, a match, that leads into maybe a 60-minute match, or this would be a place for the bull rope match, or something along the lines of if they wanted to do something even bigger but more traditional, the cage match, and when will they do their first cage match? That's coming. We're going to get that probably before the end of the year, I think.
I think they're gonna ride this one out. I think they're gonna ride the Rhodes, Tully, Blanchard history with it. For some reason I see Sean Spears going over.
Okay.
It'll be something to do with Tully in a chair, guaranteed. And then the next time they fight, they're gonna add a different weapon, and then they're gonna start the cage, and then I think we're gonna get like a Sean Blanchard, Cody Rhodes style feud here.
And I mean, you do have Dustin sort of waiting in the wings as well. That could be added to the feud at some point. I don't think, from what I can see of Tully, he still looks, Tully's not 800 pounds anymore, but I think, they should be respectful of him and probably not get him into the bumps anymore. But we'll see how that goes. He just might be crazy enough to try it.
Right. But I wouldn't see him working any matches, but I can definitely see him bumping in a managerial role maybe once or twice. Maybe the first time he does take a bump is a miscue, and that's where Cody finally goes over on Sean Spears in the future. But I think whatever happens in this, I'm excited to see what happens with MJF in the mix, because he's got a beef with Sean Spears because he's Cody Rhodes' best friend.
Yeah, and he's a guy who's gotten a lot of the build-up hype MJF has, and I think rightfully so. I think the kid never comes out of character, and he really is a cocksucker.
I just saw a picture of him with a fan in a wheelchair, and he's flipping the guy off. Like, I don't even want to take this picture.
That's hilarious. I think and as a measure to me that I was right that the guy, a lot of people are saying that he's got, star power and stuff, but he even won over Jim Cornette, you know what I mean? And in the Battle Royal there, I mean, it's exactly what you just pointed out. The first thing he did was go after the guy with no legs and shit stop him. You know what I mean? It's like, what? So he doesn't have an opponent like a natural, rivalry yet. He's sort of waiting in the wings. So it will be interesting to see this. If he ties into this rivalry, this could become a big thing. But I wouldn't want it, I wouldn't want it to turn into like tag matches, like Cody and but we'll see if he picks up after the feud is over with Cody and Spears, if MJF runs in and they do a Spears and MJF continuation and stuff like that. So yeah, exciting stuff, and definitely Tully Blanchard again. I can't repeat this enough. If you're a younger follower that didn't get a chance to watch, Tully Blanchard is the Four Horsemen, Ric Flair. That's this pedigree. So you're talking about the elite storylines of the 70s, 80s, 90s, that era and stuff like that. So please, first, be respectful. Second, go back and watch this shit. That's where this all comes from. So, they stood on the shoulders of giants before them. So, moving up the card, we got this is the tag team card, the Escalera de la Muerte, and you got the Lucha Brothers and the Young Bucks, and you're expecting AEW to do a lot with the Young Bucks being executives as well. They're not going to be putting the tag team bouts in second slots. You know what I mean? They're going to feature them, and I think that this one with the ladders and stuff, and with the opponents that are all they're equal. I like the fact that they're also hyped. In the promos talking about how the opponents are also brothers and stuff. So I think this is obviously. What do you expect? This is going to be get your neck braces out.
I don't know if you've ever seen any of the past ladder matches that these two teams have had against each other, but I am not going to sit in my seat during that entire match because I don't want to miss a single thing at all. It's going to be fast paced. It's going to be hard hit. This is the one match where I don't want to blink, but I know this match is going to go like 25, 30 minutes. So I'm going to have to blink at some point.
Yeah, I think what you're going to see here is, especially in the early stages, a lot of the stuff that these guys do is going to hit a lot of the audience as being very fresh, and I think it is standout stuff. It is the kind of thing that is going to get attention. So I think they're doing a good job, leading into the TV show by coming up with things like this. This is going to be a highlight reel from end to end. I don't think anybody expects any different. Now, they've got an additional tag team match there, and it's going to suck to follow the Lucha Brothers and the Young Bucks if the order I'm reading from here. I think I'm reading it the wrong way here. So I think Best Friends and the Dark Order will warm up, and then we'll get Lucha Brothers and Young Bucks. But hopefully, because I would want to follow that fight. But how do you see? Best Friends, I see their gimmick. I mean, but it's just that. I don't see a world title gimmick. But I think they're good workers and stuff. And I don't know much about the Dark Order, to be honest with you.
Well, the Dark Order used to be called the Super Smash Bros. On the indie scene. At one point, they were heralded as the best tag team in the world, but they were unsigned. I think they wrestle mostly in Canada, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, the Young Bucks tried to get them into TNA when they were there, and they wouldn't listen. They tried to get them into Ring of Honor when they were there, and Ring of Honor didn't want them. So now the Young Bucks signed them, and they're going to showcase them to the world. They're an awesome tag team. I'm not big on the two guys at all, but as a team, they're pretty good. And Best Friends, I've been watching them since New Japan days and earlier than that. Like Chucky T used to be one of the guys I used to see on VHS tapes from indie shows when I used to tape trade back in the day. So I'm actually looking forward to this match. Both teams are a little sloppy in the ring. Best Friends a little more or so. But I definitely see the Best Friends going over. They've been pushing them pretty heavily. And then this gives Dark Order something to interfere in for the rest of the tournament to keep with their minions coming in and out. That's just my opinion.
Okay. Yeah. I expect a lot of that. But, if some of the speculation that my partner here, Justin, is popping up doesn't turn up, there's an expectation that they're going to be doing stuff. They're going to be trying stuff. They're going to be pushing the envelope a little bit because they're building up for TV, and then they got to get you on a weekly basis. So, what we'll talk afterwards, but, there's no Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy on this card. And, they're expected, I think, to be a big part of the tag team scene for them. So yeah. So Best Friends and Trent Beretta, and then we've got the major singles match. That this could be, I see it as the final two matches that are here, Moxley and Omega, and then Jericho and Page. They could be intertwined. They could be completely separate, but they could be intertwined. Like if Omega wins and Jericho wins, then Omega Jericho is a very compelling follow-up for the title, and then it would be Omega, perhaps a more decorated wrestler than Page at this time in his career, getting the belt for the long run, or Moxley could win, and then Moxley and Jericho. But I think should maybe steer away from doing matches that could have happened in other organizations. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't see them going Mox Jericho at all. That's WWE versus WWE, and all the hardcore guys like me are just gonna shit on it. To be real with you.
So yeah, so I think I agree. Obviously, it's a no-brainer. That's to be avoided.
And then we've also seen Alpha versus Omega twice, haven't we? So I mean, why? I mean, do we really need a third one? So I don't know. I would rather much see either Page and Mox, or I'd rather see Omega and Page. Only because
Right.
Omega and Page could feud, and their storyline could be on being the elite week in and week out.
And uh, they could go their separate ways. I mean, at the end of the day, Omega wins. He's got one win with AEW. You can keep him in the rotation doing work and hold him off for a belt shot. Hopefully they don't rush into a bunch of stuff like that, or a lot of belt changes and things as well. But and then you've got the final match, Page and Jericho, which I'm going to ask you here as we wrap up. I think we also led off speaking about that. So we're asking you to wrap up. If you mentioned a couple of guys, Adam Page and the Dark Order, and a couple of the other folks, Sean Spears, that you have been following from the indie scene. Why don't you pick a memorable story from one of those guys? The first one that comes to your mind, like the story, like if I had to tell a younger guy like a Dusty Rhodes story, like Papa Rhodes, I would tell the Midnight Rider story, which I don't. Are you familiar with that? A lot, Basically, he was suspended and he came back in a mask and won the world title and had to give it up because he wouldn't take the mask off. So that that's the story I would tell about Dusty Rhodes and his. Go ahead and give me a Sean Spears or a Dark Order story, or one that comes to mind that from the indie scene.
Oh, from the indie scene.
Or from whichever one that, the most memorable moment. I didn't mean to limit you.
I was going to say that, honestly, with like Hangman Page, when he came out for the Battle Royal as a surprise entrant at All In, I think it was, and the place went absolutely insane. I think that was the moment where Page got made, because nobody expected him to be that surprise entrant. And even when the first couple of notes of his music hit, nobody kind of knew who it was until it said Hangman on the screen and the roof came off of the Sears Center. Like I fully believe in 5 years he will be one of the top two in the entire world, guaranteed, hands down.
Okay, and I recently saw their most recent production had him sitting around with the Young Bucks, like ordering food, in the hotel and stuff like that. And he's a personable dude, like I'm just like in that format stuff. He's a guy I will watch week to week. I think he does have star power and the right amount of in the presentation anyway, the right amount of confidence and humility and stuff like that. So yeah, I think they have a big, good. Is he a baby face nowadays? I don't even know those terms matter anymore. But yeah, I think he would be a baby face, right?
Yeah, he'd definitely be a baby face. And do you think the three guys ordering room service was a knock on a table for three?
I'm sorry, what?
So I looked at that video where they were sitting there ordering room service and talking. Isn't that AEW poking fun at the table for three episodes on the network? Because it's three people eating food, talking. Like I thought it was a big inside joke. Like I was laughing hysterically the whole time.
Yeah, I think I didn't catch on to that, but yeah, I think they're having a lot of fun with what they're doing nowadays. You know what I mean? And I think that was that would not be something. You may very well be right. So that with let me see here. So we finished looking through the card, and you mentioned Adam Page. Now, to me, like with the Hangman nickname, like is he like a Stan Hansen, like or like a Bobby Jaggers, or like can you go back in history to like guys with the cowboy type of character and quantify him, or what kind of talent, who else could we compare him to? Like maybe for the WWE roster, it's like physically, is he like a Kurt Hennig's kid? You take it away because I know you know a lot more than me.
I'd give him a mix between like a blackjack mulligan and a
Nice
late
choice.
2000s JBL, like a JBL blackjack mulligan in between. I mean, he can work, he can talk. His selling is, I mean, 9 out of 10. I mean, his selling is phenomenal. I mean, he sold the hell out of that leg at All In. He sold the hell out of it at
Oh
Fight
yeah.
for the Fall. Dude's a phenomenal seller. He's a phenomenal worker. Like that, he just needs the proper push, which I think is going to happen here.
That's also it's funny. Now we'll close with this, and then we'll head on to the next segment here, which will be some fun. But when we're talking about Hangman Page now, we're talking about him as a babyface, and you talk about him bringing elements of Blackjack Mulligan and JBL. Now those are heels. Are we gonna? He's also right. In terms of storyline and career arch, he's also at some point going to have the character type of ability to go and be a bad guy too, if he plays it correctly. So, it'd be interesting to see. Oh man, you mentioning Blackjack Mulligan brings back the days watching, that stuff, edgy stuff on TV. I remember in WWE, Blackjack Mulligan would put the claw on the guy, and what they would do is they would put a big red X on the screen. They wouldn't show it to you. It would just be Vince screaming in the back, being like, "Oh my God, get him off him!" You know how Vince hypes things. But it would just for many weeks they would not even show you him applying the claw. Man, Blackjack Mulligan was scary. So I'm glad you mentioned that. That is a blast from the past. So we talked a little bit about AEW's pay-per-view. We talked about NXT moving there, and AEW is going to have to deal with. On a weekly basis, putting out the product there. And to be honest with you, from what we've seen, there are little elements like we mentioned briefly, Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy, and there are a couple other guys that I expect to be on the AEW roster long term that are not on this pay-per-view yet, that we haven't seen there. So, but I still don't think they have a flushed out, full out roster. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think they have the full roster that they're looking for yet. I'm actually kind of upset that MJF and Jungle Boy both aren't on the card at all. I'm a huge MJF fan, and I am a huge Jungle Boy fan. So those are two of the favorites that I'm hoping to at least see them walking around somewhere just so I can say what's up at All Out. But like Jungle Boy is gonna be a big name for the female fan base, in my opinion. Because that's the one thing from female wrestling fans I heard was all Jungle Boy this, Jungle Boy that. So I think they have a really good signing with him to get the female, the young, especially the younger female. I mean, the guy looks like he's like 16. I mean, come on. I mean, I think I'm happy with him, Jungle Boy.
Yeah, I think MJF too is another guy. I you don't see a lot of 20 somethings, under 25-year-olds on WWE's roster. And he may have a different type of appeal, but I do think that is the way to go, is to feature some of the younger guys to bring in a different audience. At the end of the day, I'm 49, so it's like the blast from the past stuff is grabbing me, but they're not being they're not ignoring that. So yeah, I think let's talk a little bit about what they could do with some roster moves. I got a few names here. We'll let's start off with CM Punk. That you obviously hold on one quick second. Yeah. So we started talking about CM Punk and how he might be, the biggest ad out there for this roster. And you're hoping he goes there. The possibility exists, like you said, the way he handles himself, and he's such a pro. You may be getting a little bit of the coy smoke and mirrors stuff. He did a drive-by in an indie show with a mask on too. Talk a little bit about that. Did you hear about that?
That was an hour from my house, man. I live an hour north of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, so that's my location.
And
oh, go ahead.
No, but and I also heard through CM Punk hasn't left doing the appearance circuits, like autograph signings and, I forget what the conventions and types of stuff. He's still very active in that and doing stuff. The Comic-Con thing, obviously, with him drawing for, Marvel Comics as well, he gets like a dual pop there. You know what I mean? So he's still been out there, but he hasn't been doing much in the ring stuff. So that's why it was a surprise and maybe portent of things to come here with him doing that drive-by recently here. Either way, I think how do you see WWE reacting to CM Punk going to AEW? Do you think there's like they've called him and said, before you sign any contract, call us. We'll match. We'll double. Are they going to be that aggressive? Would he even take that phone call? Because a lot of people. I have a friend who's in the business who I think was talking to Diamond Dallas Page about the CM Punk situation and around that time when he left. And Diamond Dallas Page, if I'm not mistaken, said he might not be back. He's the kind of like free spirit kind of guy that, most guys you'll be like, he'll be back, the business always draws you back kind of thing. But and you're talking about Diamond Dallas Page, a dog in the business, right? And for him to say, I don't know, that guy might not. He's really that special. So is he even taking WWE phone calls at this point? Or is he going to do that? What's going on? What's your theory?
Well, in my research, before we went live here, I read from Big Uncle Dave Meltzer that CM Punk's manager agency or whatever actually had called Fox to try to get Punk as a on-air commentator for WWE. Take it for what it's worth, but that's pretty hilarious if you think about it, because technically he wouldn't be working for WWE, he would have been working for Fox. Regardless of the fact, I'm really hoping that him doing the drive-by, go to sleep at a indie show in my state where the main reason he did it was because when he wrestled the indie scene before WWE, he made that place popular with indie wrestling by working there. So I think that's one reason why he did it, because that was the last show at that place, at that location.
Okay.
I think they tore it down or sold it, something or another. But I really hope that was him getting his toes wet in wrestling again. I really hope so. But he does. I mean, he's a busy dude. He writes comics. He acts. He's got a horror movie coming out that he starred in.
Yeah.
Former WWE Hornswoggle.
Okay.
So Punk and Hornswoggle used to be friends, and he had asked Punk for a mutual friend's phone number, and CM Punk said, "Fuck you," and blocked him for asking for a mutual friend's number. So that kind of shows you how he's a dick.
Yeah. Sometimes once you get to be, a personality like that, it can take you in a whole bunch of different directions. But in the ring, he clicked with the crowds and stuff like that. And I think, the final thing we'll mention here before I go down my list of other guys is, it's 5 years basically since that pipe bomb kind of thing and stuff, and people still chant his name. That's big, in terms of memory and stuff like that. So I think if AEW can take advantage of that, it would be terrific. Now, let's go through here. Going deeper into the AEW roster, and maybe where I'd like to fill it out is, we talked about Awesome Kong, we talked about Nyla Rose. They really don't have any giants on the men's side, and that's one aspect that I think, maybe if it's not on their short list of things that are coming, it should be, right? Right now, the biggest guy on the roster is Luchasaurus, if I'm not mistaken.
Luchasaurus, or that, can't think of his name. He was in the Battle Royal, but he's a pretty big dude too.
Okay. There's that Ace.
AC baby.
He's huge, but I don't know that he's see, the thing is
he's not agile though.
Well, here's the thing is, I think for these early shows, AEW's been doing the right thing by guys like that. And I'll give you another example of a guy that on the indie scene, and I'm not an indie guy, so I have to defer to you and you correct me if I'm wrong, right? But like a guy like Marco Stunt, right? I don't know that a guy like that's got, long-term AEW, like they're thinking about what are we going to be doing with Marco, like in 5 years with like they are with Adam Page, you know what I mean? But I think giving him a spot there, or they signed Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy's another guy that I think can wrestle actually a little bit too, aside from his gimmick, right? But giving them little spots like that, I think was a tribute. But I don't think that everybody's going to come along for the full AEW roster and ride and stuff. And AC Baby may be one of those guys that kind of filled out the Battle Royal and they'll call up, but I don't know that they're going to extend a full contract. I mean, I may be wrong. They may grab everybody, but like Marco is a guy that I don't want to put down because he probably works very, very hard. But I don't know, aside from a gimmick role like a Hornswoggle role, you'd have to create a real role for him. You just can't bring him out week to week and roll him in there as a wrestler. They'd have to figure out more of a character for him. So anyway, what do you think? Where can they reach for some big guys?
I've always been a fan of Moose from Impact Wrestling. I think
Okay.
he would be a pretty good big guy. He can work. He's tall. He's ripped, for that matter. I'm not a big fan of Brian Cage, but I would like to see him and see what he can do on a bigger scale other than Impact Wrestling. I think he'd be a pretty good. I mean, he works solid with any body type that I've seen so far. Other than that,
well, let me ask you a couple bigger names though. What about a guy like a Ryback?
I could see that, but at the same time, he's kind of one of those dudes too, where I don't think he would want to put over anybody that wasn't in a WWE. I mean, he's never lost on the indie scene for a reason, right?
Yeah. Well, maybe on the indie scene when you're, I don't know, but if him, like, he's got to go back to that. Like, first of all, Ryback to me was, when he popped up on the WWE scene, obviously he was the muscle guy, the huge guy, but he was one of those first guys that actually could do some work on a mic with, like some of his mic work, and it was improving too. And then they sort of chopped his legs off, right?
Right.
But, if he went to AEW, all of that stuff, which may have been an issue, goes away, and then they have a natural big guy, and I think, his in-ring work, I think he would work. What about a guy like Brodus Clay? Where's he? I was thinking Funkasaurus versus Luchasaurus. I'm stupid that way.
But that's something I could totally see AEW doing.
Yeah.
Funkasaurus, Luchasaurus, and they'd probably team Marco with Brodus, and then you got Marco and Jungle Boy, who are the same size, and you got Brodus and Luchasaurus as the two muscle men behind it. So, I mean, there we go. We just created a storyline for AEW right there.
Yeah, and and I think that they're the kind of people that don't rule that out. And it's cool because I'd like to see it, and I do think they need some big guys. I think that having a roster with high flyers, because I mean, at the end of the day, Cody Rhodes can fly too. You know what I mean? He's still a smaller guy. That monsters aspect. Should the WWE obviously has the elite big guys that are out there. But I do think that you don't need big names like you said. Moose would be. What about a guy like I don't know if he's a true giant, but man, he works vicious. Is a guy like Bram?
Yeah. I'm not too familiar, really comment on him.
Oh, okay.
I've maybe seen like 2 or 3 matches of him, so I don't want to give a full judgment at all,
Okay, and that's no problem. And it's interesting. I caught you, huh? But I didn't mean, I saw Bram. I want to say in a series with the Scottish guy that's in WWE now.
Sheamus?
No, the long-haired guy that's kind. What was that? Yeah, Drew McIntyre. I think I saw them working together. It may have been in Impact Wrestling. If not, it was another guy similar to that. And Bram was impressive in intensity. I think on a personal level, he's had some outside the ring type of issues and stuff. So we'll see. What about a guy like Big Cass?
Cass XL. Oh yeah, bring both of them. Bring Enzo and Cass in, dude. That would be. I'm a huge Enzo and Cass fan.
Now, let me ask you this: has Enzo closed enough doors though? Because I think they're separate guys now, and Enzo's some of the stories that surround Enzo go beyond just they could rule, they could shorten his career. People could rule him out. So, well, if you could tell me anything about that, that'd be interesting. But Big Cass, is he on the independent scene? You say Cass XL? I think he had rebranded himself. Is that right?
Well, Enzo and Cass are a tag team on the indie scene again. They just released a promo video about 2 weeks ago, I want to say. But yeah, Cass was at an indie show here in Wisconsin when he had a seizure about 2 months back. I think that was down in Milwaukee, to be honest with you. It seems like Milwaukee has all the interesting wrestling stories nowadays. Yeah, he's teaming back up with Enzo right now, and I'm pretty sure they're gonna start taking indie bookings as a tag team again.
Okay.
I think they were called the Free Agents or the Agency or something like that, something along those lines. I'll double check it.
Okay, and that would be an amazing twist to the to AEW's tag team scene. A guy like a giant and a small guy like that. They have a few of them, but Cass would be, the biggest guy on the roster by far at that point, even with some of the other guys we're talking about. Now,
I believe it was like 2 weeks ago out in Minneapolis, maybe Minnesota, somewhere over in that direction. Moxley did a run-in with Enzo and Cass at an indie show and beat the piss out of both of them.
oh,
So
okay.
well, now that my mind is roaming, I will throw out one big muscular dude that I would love to see in AEW. I don't know if you've heard of them. I don't know if you follow Game Changer Wrestling, GCW. They're kind of a deathmatch company, but this dude named Schlack would be an immense addition to their roster, both in their hardcore deathmatch division and in their just size and pure in-ring work. That dude's a monster.
Can you help me out with spelling?
Schlak.
Uh-huh.
He's a big dude with a gap in his grill and tattoos on his head. Dude, go crazy.
Okay, let's see here. I don't know if I'm coming up with a picture of him. Did he do some NCAA wrestling as well? Okay, I see. I got him here. Aha. CFW Mid-Atlantic Wrestling, Dawson, Schlack, and O'Hare versus Big. Okay, I got some research to do. You gave me some homework to do after the show, so I'm grateful for that. But so I think we can start to wrap it up a little bit here. Why don't you go ahead and plug some of the indie stuff that you're involved with? I know that you may have a retirement match, as we stated in October. Why don't you go ahead and give people the details in case they want to follow up with that?
Sure. Well, I've been working in wrestling since 2001, where I self-trained myself in my yard in a ring with no ropes because I couldn't figure out how to put ropes on my ring. In 2005, I went and got trained. I was trained by WWE's Hornswoggle. Just as he got signed, he would fly back home for the weekends, and we would train in a warehouse in the middle of summer with no AC and no fans running and work the community picnic circuits, as they called it back then. But yeah, October 12th, I have my quote unquote retirement match. If I lose, I'm done in wrestling. I just came back after a 2.5 year hiatus due to a back injury after working the best wrestler in Wisconsin, Joey Jet Avalon. I had to throw that name out there. He needs more publicity. There's some more homework for you. Check out Joey Avalon up here in Wisconsin. But yeah, my best friend Damon Knight attacked me when I came back to a show, and he attacked me again at the last show and made my daughter cry. So now I'm going to punch him in the face for it. And he wants to try to make things personal. So I put my career on the line, and I'm going to wrestle in front of my hometown a week after my 33rd birthday. And the only way he's beating me is if I'm dying. And I mean, don't get me wrong, life kind of sucks right now, but I'm not dying yet.
So, definitely something to keep an eye on. And this, CRP podcast here has basically been because of the wrestling thread has basically started because the WWE is so big that they get odds at the sport books and stuff. And that's where a lot of our listeners come from. The AEW obviously has competition for WWE, now gets to jump to that level. But I want to encourage everybody out there to respect and support the independent wrestling scene wherever you can. You know, he's been talking about the Wisconsin scene. You know, I know there's scenes all over the country and stuff, and I think it's important because at the end of the day, you got to break in somewhere, you know, and it reminds me of the old days in MMA where, you know, you had the small shows and stuff, and you might have to go fight in the dojo, or you might have to go, you know, fight in, you know, a show that you necessarily weren't going to get paid or anything like that, just, you know, getting the experience in, and that's what happens on the indie scene. You know, some guys stay on the indie scene and bring up the other guys like Schlack and guys like that. But it all deserves support. And, you know, AEW is being able to do some of what they're being able to do because they're standing on the shoulder of an independent scene that had fought its way to, you know, that couldn't be denied, basically. You know what I mean? It's like, it's hard. It was so compelling, the stuff going on in New Japan and Ring of Honor and stuff like that, that it really wasn't going to be denied. And I think that's where we got to. And I think AEW is a little bit of a tribute to it. I think the thing is with TNT, you know, now hopefully the rest of the indie scene maybe gets a little bit of a rub and more love, you know? So anyway, with that, I want to thank my guest, Justin Nett, and we've been talking AEW, WWE, and beyond here, pro wrestling. Definitely an excellent podcast. Definitely looking forward to another one in the future. Justin, any final words?
Just to go along with your support the indie scene. If it wasn't for the indie scene, we wouldn't have guys like CM Punk. We wouldn't have guys like the Young Bucks. We wouldn't have numerous, even the Hardy Boys. I mean, that's all started on the indie scene. So if you want to see the stars of tomorrow, go there today and see them today before, you know, they're on your TV, and you can actually say, hey, I knew that guy, because they're going to talk to you at the indie show. You're going to get a lot better connection than with the WWE event. So definitely support your indie wrestling scene.
Yeah, that's the buzz about the indie thing. And then here's the other part of it is tickets are a lot cheaper. You know, and so it makes it easier to support. I'm not putting anybody down because the guys work just as hard. So get out there and support them. I'm Miguel Iturrate for the CRP. We're signing off. Thanks a lot, Justin. It was an awesome podcast.
Thank you.